Okay. I don't know, like I said, I don't know if this is going to be one long video or one short or two short videos. I don't know. I'm hoping one long video. Faster than Stife breaks. So, Lady Rosamond, what do you need us to do in this dinner match? The Ob asked, not even attempting to hide the glee in his expression. We would only be borrowing from the knights who volunteered to participate, which meant a meeting was in order. I shall take control of Aronsbach's foundation as quickly as I am able, I said. In the meantime, I would ask that your volunteers distract the Aronsbach Knights Order in the sky above their castle. Oh, you would make them decoys, not your vanguard. Indeed, only those who have died Aronsbach Foundation will receive access to its mana replenishment hall, and time is already of the essence. I shall need to die the Foundation in one go, and then enter alone, which is why I will require a diversion. Even as we spoke, Sylvester Ferdinand was being drained of mana. I couldn't waste any time while dying the Foundation. Registration phase stones would also be needed to enter the mana replenishment hall, and registering those who weren't in my family would delay me too long. My objective is to save Ferdinand, I said, but to do that quickly and with minimal risk, I need your help. I do not mean to destroy Aronsbach or my enemies, but of course if you wish to take their foundation as a trophy once our job there is done, consider it yours. I planned to die the foundation by downing a string of rejuvenation potions, but I only needed it to enter the mana replenishment hall. I wouldn't hesitate to surrender it once Ferdinand was safe and sound. Maybe someone else would claim it next, but you'd need to be a madman to want to rule a duchy wrapped up in heist treason. Not a chance, the Op replied. I want nothing to do with a duchy fated to earn the sovereignty's ire, and Aronsbach's scheming with Lonzanov is a veritable death sentence. My role here is simply to mete out punishment. Oh, is that so? I really thought Dunkelfelger would want it since securing the enemy's foundation is the victory condition of a dinner match, but evidently not. Lady Rosamond, the Op continued, as we have promised to support you during this match against Aronsbach, we shall do everything in our power to help you die their foundation. I am grateful, I replied. Asking for Dunkelfelger's assistance had been the right call. They always went full throttle when it came to dinner. Now, when will the dinner bells ring? The Ob asked, openly eager to get started. As far as I'm concerned, they sounded the moment Ferdinand was poisoned, I replied with a smile. Either we will rescue him and win, or he would run out of mana. I will commence the assault as soon as Dunkelfelger is prepared. How quickly can your volunteers be ready? Our own knights had spent an entire month training for this battle and brewing all sorts of useful magic tools and potions. They were ready to mobilize at a moment's notice. My retainers were no exception. They had already decided which of them would accompany me and would set out as soon as I sent the word. We were just waiting on Dunkelfelger. We only have so much time, correct? The Ob said, stroking his chin. Do you need to attack during the day? He was facing me, but staring into empty space, focused entirely on the matter at hand. And not at all. Attacking at night should save commoners from getting caught in the crossfire. I would also like to move under cover of darkness if we can. Although I planned to reach Aronsbach's foundation through his temple, I still wanted to keep casualties to a minimum. If anyone tried to stop me from saving Ferdinand, I would simply wrap them in bands of light. It wouldn't be a pleasant experience for the victims. Nobody wanted to be on the receiving end of a noble stab, but it was better to leave someone terrified than dead. Save commoners, Ob Dunkelfelger muttered, under cover of darkness. My opinions might change when I see how Lonzanov's soldiers and the Aronsbach Knight Order are positioned, but right now I would ask that you keep the fight in the sky above the nobles' quarter. I want no harm to come to the general public. That said, this is only a request. The only absolute in this operation is we must rescue Ferdinand. The Ob's gaze finally returned to me. How long do you expect this match to last? He asked, still stroking his chin. That will determine how much needs to be prepared. It should only take me one bell to pin down the foundation, but I cannot yet say how long I will need to save Ferdinand. If we could get in touch with Eckert and Justice, sneaking into Aronsbach's castle wouldn't be too hard. It was a pretty big if, though. I didn't know whether Letizia had spoken to them, nor what Ferdinand had meant when he told them to go. In the worst-case scenario, they might have been imprisoned as well. If only we knew where in Aronsbach's castle the mana replenishment hall was located. Aurelia might be able to tell us. I'd racked my brain for someone we could consult, and a single name had come to mind. Aurelia, who had moved away from Aronsbach to marry Lampret. As the late Ob Aronsbach's niece, she had to be at least partially familiar with the castle's layout. I wasn't going to have the mother of a young child participate in the battle, of course, but we could at least ask her what she knew. Ob Dunkelfelger, I said, make whatever preparations you need to fight for 2 bells. Aronfest's magic tools and rejuvenation potions ready to be distributed and to restock any used during this match. Rosemine Sylvester Chaston, don't just make grand promises, negotiate properly. I understood why he was so bothered since it was Aronfest's money on the line, but I shook my head in disagreement. Consider this as necessary expense to cut down on our negotiation time, I replied. You have nothing to worry about. In any case, we are only heading to Aronsbach at my selfish request. So I shall cover those costs of my own funds. Nobody can complain about us saving Ferdinand with the money he left behind. I mean, I wouldn't mind using the money I earned, but something tells me that Ferdinand would try to pay me back 5 times over. He would. He would. He'd at least pay you back double. Compensation can come later, though, I said. More pertinent are a number of warnings about the coming battle. To begin with, Aronsbach is bound to be using Lonzanov's silver cloth, which is practically immune to mana attacks. From there, I went through every danger I could think of. I doubled the Ehrensbacher or Lanzanov would be using staffs, which meant this was going to be a very abnormal dinner match. To conclude, bring weapons that aren't made from staffs, cover your mouth with cloth to block whatever poisons our foe might use, and prepare rejuvenation potions, antidotes, and Jareves as necessary. If we need anything else, we can have our volunteers ready before the date changes. Or need nothing else, we can have our volunteers ready before the date changes. That's so quick. Or wait, does he mean everything's prepared already and the only time-consuming post is picking whoever gets to go? The Ob continued, I expect all preparations for going to the Sovereignty to be completed around the same time. Allow me to make one thing clear, though. We will act only when the royal family instructs us to. Moving of our own volition will only see us branded as traitors. We understand. Sylvester replied, it didn't matter that Dunkelfelder had honest intentions. No good would come from them arriving at the Sovereignty unannounced with a massive army. Of course, they would wait to receive permission. We shall inform the royal family that we have requested your support, Sylvester said. It should go without saying that this is a most unusual situation with our opponent working in tandem with Lanzanov. I expect we will see discord even without the Sovereign Knight's order. I plan to seek aid from the other greater duchies as well, but in this endeavor I must ask you to support us. We do not have the connections to convince them alone. The Ob's eyes glinted with amusement. We can do that for you, though. I should warn you, it will prevent Ehrenfest from taking full credit for this operation. We cannot do this without your help. If you wish, we will cede all the credit. Oh? Having been prompted to continue, Sylvester cast his eyes down a little. If we say rescue Ferdinand, can you imagine what the consequences might be? Perhaps his attempt on his life was made because he learned a grave secret? In which case, we could expect our foes to unify in a desperate attempt to finish the job. Ehrensbach nobles will need to obey Rosemine once she obtains their foundation, but the same cannot be said of all those from Old Rockstock, who will remain unrestricted and volatile. I expect that once Rosemine rescues Ferdinand, Ehrenfest will have its hands full preparing for Ehrensbach's next move. Though we can advise greater duchies to join the fight in the Sovereignty, we won't be able to participate ourselves. In short, while Ehrenfest could provide aid, we would not be able to join the battle proper. Old Workstock, Dunkelfelder repeated with a grimace. A troublesome place indeed. Though we oversee much of its land, we cannot treat its people as our own. The explosion in his voice made it clear that he was struggling to manage his part of the former duchy. The Ob then looked at me head on, a bitter smile on his face. History shows that stealing a foundation is easy. The hard part is what comes next. That's why true dinner matches rarely take place. There was an unmistakable glimmer in his eyes as red as Lestalot's. To rule, the new Ob would need to transport personnel, resources, and money from their original duchy to their new one. That fact alone explained why battles over foundations only happened in extreme circumstances. It also emphasized why Ehrenfest claiming the foundation of a much larger duchy was the peak of recklessness. I am eager to see what you will do upon obtaining Ehrensbach's foundation, the Ob said with a provocative smile. For us, this is merely a chance to experience a true dinner match, but your involvement will not end once Ferdinand is safe. You will need to manage Ehrensbach, and if worst comes to worst, Ehrenfest will crumble. He couldn't have been clearer with his warning. If we wanted to back out, now was the time. I returned the smile, not wavering for a moment. I am well aware of our situation, Ob Dunkelfelder. Do enjoy the show. Before the next Archduke conference, I was due to become the king's adopted daughter and obtain the Krugerscheid. My newfound authority would allow me to redraw duchy borders and place new foundations. No way was I going to let Ehrenfest fall. I like the resolve in your eyes. I like it a lot. My one regret is that we didn't get you into Dunkelfelder. Now, Lady Rosamund, where am I to send the volunteers? I shall meet them at your country gate when the date changes. Please open your border gate and have them wait nearby. Our country gate? That must mean... I said nothing to the wide-eyed Ob. My only response was a sly smile. I see, he said. So that's what's going on here. Now you've really caught my interest. Upon my arrival, I shall take those who are present and nobody else. As I said many times, rescuing Ferdinand is my victory condition. I will need to steal Ehrensbach's foundation faster than Steifbreath, the goddess of the gale. Ob Dunkelfelder clenched his right fist and tapped it twice against his left breast, brimming with an immense excitement for the upcoming battle. Hear, hear, maybe we faster than Steifbreath. Then he faded out of sight. The communication line must have been closed. Sylvester was still facing the pool of water, but I could feel him giving me the side eye. You're a pretty decent motivator, he said. I didn't play all those dinner games against Dunkelfelder for nothing. Their ceaseless passion will play a key role in our victory. I can think of at least one person who will join this battle. Heifetz, because he feels guilty of what he did. He sent Ferdinand to be around someone who caused him so much, who was related to someone who caused so much suffering to him in the past. So yeah, he'd want to make it right. Sylvester gave a hesitant smile. I could sense that he was a little uneasy, but we now had a powerful ally by our side. A conversation with Dunkelfelder had produced the best possible result. I will need you to coordinate my departure with my retainers, I mused aloud. Oh, but I must contact the royal family and the greater duchies before then. Having so much to do was intolerable when I wanted to leave as soon as possible, but I understood that deep down that this groundwork would prove crucial. I needed to warn the royals that something bad was happening and that were seeking help from Dunkelfelger and the Greater Duchies. You've already come up with a good excuse for our actions and secured us Dunkelfelger's support. Let me deal with our remaining correspondence as the Ob. You're heading out at the dead of night, so your focus needs to be on making sure you're ready. Don't let sleep dull your senses this time. I fell silent, remembering how I needed to fight back sleep while battling the Golts. A nap and a wake-up potion was going to be necessary. Sylvester went to shoo me out of the room, but an ordnance flew in before he could. This is the teleportation hall, it said. We have an urgent message from the Royal Academy for the Ob. Eckert and Justice have arrived at the Ehrenfest dormitory and are asking to meet with you. They are currently waiting in our tea party room. What shall we do? Sylvester and I exchanged glances as the ordnance repeated its message 2 more times and turned into a yellow face stone. How had they made it here when they were supposed to be in the belly of the beast? I can't imagine Ob Ahrensbach gave them permission to teleport. Dude, do you not remember he's dead? As I pondered that situation, a thought occurred to me. Ferdinand must have prepared something in advance. He was telling them to go, had providedly meant go to Sylvester. Perhaps he had devised his plan so that he could immediately contact Ehrenfest if something happened. There was a lot to digest here, but the fact that Eckert and Justice were at the Royal Academy to begin with meant that Letizia had managed to reach them after bursting out of Ahrensbach's Manor Replenishment Hall. Sylvester frowned so hard that his eyebrows almost touched above his nose. To be honest, Rosamund, I was hoping that you were somehow mistaken about all this, but now we have irrefutable evidence. These two would never leave Ferdinand unless they absolutely had to. He made a stab, then turned the yellow face stone, or tapped the yellow face stone to turn it back into an ordnance. I'll make my way to the Royal Academy to welcome them as soon as I finish contacting the royal family. As the Archduke, only Sylvester could make the brooches necessary to enter the Ehrenfest dormitory. It was also up to him to decide whether to let Eckert and Justice back into our duchy. The situation wouldn't be able to progress unless he went there personally. Once the ordnance had disappeared again, Sylvester turned to me. Rosamund, what's your next move? Me? I want to go to the Royal Academy too. I can't face waiting any longer. I need to see that Eckert and Justice are safe with my own 2 eyes, then grill them for as much information about Ferdinand as I can get. I'll continue getting ready for the battle and prepare whatever Eckert and Justice might need, I said. Tell them to come to my library once you've finished speaking with them. And in our endeavor to rescue Ferdinand, I can't think of 2 more valuable allies. I gave Sylvester 2 rejuvenation potions to be given to our visitors, then to turn to my heel. It was time to redirect my retainers. Epilogue! And now, oh my god, now I'm even more excited for the next volume. Because the next volume is the dinner game. Detlinde and Ferdinand were absent for the introductory tournament and graduation ceremony when Lanzanov's ships appeared at Ahrensbach's country gate. The envoys customarily arrived after the Archduke conference, so they were an entire season early. It would seem they wished to petition the royal family to overturn last year's decision in advance of the Archduke conference, said Roswitha, Letizia's head attendant. Letizia's brow furrowed. Is it not the case that the border gate can be opened only by those who have died the foundation? I assumed it would stay closed in Lady Detlinde's absence. It shall. Straw will ask them to leave. Straw was Ahrensbach's former knight commander, relieved of duty by Detlinde for being too annoying and refusing to listen. He now served Ferdinand as a guard knight. I hope they leave before Lady Detlinde returns, Roswitha asked, making no attempt to hide her exasperation. Lord Ferdinand may be her partner by royal decree, but he is from another duchy and does not have the authority of an Ob. No matter how much he might chastise her, he will not be able to intervene. Only she has the authority to decide whether the gate is opened. Letizia nodded. Detlinde had an unhealthy attachment to Leonzio of Lanzanov. If she found out he was here, she would open the gate for him in mere moments, and they would all be forced to witness another slew of unbearable sights. Most of Ahrensbach's nobles were openly disgusted by how much Detlinde was belittling and disrespecting her fiancé, who had come to Ahrensbach by royal decree, and was personally overseeing the majority of the duchy's administrative duties. If only her mother, Lady Georgine, could keep her under control, she muttered. Lady Georgine spent a long time as a third wife and did not speak on the Ob's work even after becoming his first. She speaks only of the Ob's reputation and does not concern herself with the management of the duchy. Georgine believed it best to let the Ob come to her own decisions. She warned Detlinde about abandoning her duties, but said nothing about her alliance with Lanzanov. Although Straw was relieved as knight commander, he still holds a great deal of influence within the Knights' Order, Roswitha said. We have nothing to fear while Lady Detlinde is absent. The situation had taken a very unfortunate turn. Nobles allied with Detlinde had sent her word of Lanzanov's arrival, stubbornly insisting that the Knights' Order shouldn't disregard the Ob's wishes in her absence. Of course, Detlinde had rejoiced at the news and swiftly returned to open the border gate, completely disregarding her schedule in the process. Ferdinand was visiting his mentor's laboratory to help Fragman with his research, so nobody had been able to stop her. I apologize that my father could not prevent this, said Fairseal, Straw's daughter and Letizia's apprentice attendant. She was usually so confident in her father's talents, but now her eyes were downcast. Do not look so down, Pharisee. There was nothing Straw could do. The Knight's Order does not have the authority to refuse those with the Ob's invitation. The Lanzanov estate had opened early, in winter not spring, and several carriages had arrived filled with presents for the royal family. The port was crowded with silver ships going to and fro. Also among the cargo being brought into Ahrensbach were several gifts for Detlinde. Leonzio was delivering them personally while visiting the castle for the usual exchange of greetings. A fact which delighted the recipient. The way he smiled sweetly at her, dropped to one knee, and gave her a jeweled ornament made the exchange look entirely like a proposal. As a foreigner, he simply must not understand our culture. Such was the mindset one had to adopt to stomach what was otherwise an unbearable sight. In Jurgensmith, it was unthinkable to remove one's engagement face done to wear a neck ornament from another man, but revealing that fact would only embarrass their guest and cause a stir. Letizia's only option was to hold her tongue. And these are for Lady Letizia, Leonzio said, before presenting the girl with a familiar silver tube and colorful sweets. It would seem you quite enjoyed last year's presents. Letizia had just run out of the sweets Rosemine had given her, so she gratefully accepted the gesture with a polite, "I think you ever so much." Before she could finish, she was pushed aside by Detlinde. "Fear not, Lord Leonzio," the stand-in Ob began. "This time I shall do everything I can to make the Zent understand your country's circumstances." Leonzio nodded and replied, "I sincerely appreciate your concern." Detlinde was adamant about bringing Lanzanov and the royal family together to negotiate, and the scholars caught up in the process were being dragged every which way. Ferdinand in particular was busier than ever since he was having to make the necessary arrangements. Letizia took a quick step back as Detlinde and Leonzio launched into an energetic conversation. "Lord Ferdinand, what were the conclusions for spring prayer?" Letizia asked when he visited the greater work. He had once again been tasked with circling the duchy for spring prayer, but with Lanzanov's envoys now wandering all over, he had seldom been able to leave the castle. According to Roswitha, the foreign presence had even inspired an emergency meeting in the main building. "As I understand it," Letizia continued, "Lady Georgine's suggestion was approved. The Giebs were given small chalices and sent back home at the start of spring. Georgine had made the proposal for two reasons. There were now proven benefits to performing religious ceremonies, and entrusting the chalices to Giebs freed up the Blue Priests to focus on the central district and improve the duchy's harvest. The Giebs would ensure the chalices' safe delivery to their respective provinces, and they had more mana. Besides, Ahrensbach nobles had celebrated the idea, for it really would improve their yield of crop." "Indeed," Ferdinand replied with a bitter frown. "Lady Detlinde ordered that the Giebs be given small chalices and sent back to their provinces immediately after the feast celebrating spring." "I am told that you were strongly against the idea," Letizia said. Then she nervously asked, "Was there a serious reason for that?" "The small chalices are themselves divine instruments to be used in ceremonies. Few people knew how to properly work with them, but even then there is a serious risk of them being used maliciously. As for what a bad actor could do with the chalices, I cannot tell you at this moment in time." Ferdinand was exhausted. No matter how much he protested or tried to reason with Detlinde, she would use her authority as the Archduchess to do as she pleased. And guess who was tasked with minimizing the damage she caused? Ferdinand. "My apologies," he continued. "Until this meeting between Lanzanov and the royal family has been dealt with, I will not be able to tutor you. Please complete these tasks. In the meantime, I shall ask Sergius to collect them when they are done." Ferdinand then stood up and briskly took his leave, much earlier than usual, Letizia noted. Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked upon the mountain of work she had just received. She was spending more time completing tasks than being tutored these days. "I am out of the sweets Lady Rosamond sent me, and it gets tiresome being alone in my room," Letizia muttered. She had been told to avoid any unnecessary encounters with Lanzanov envoys, and was consequently holed up in the northern building. Her only opportunities to leave were for mana replenishment. She wasn't even allowed to eat in the dining hall without Ferdinand there to supervise her. "Lord Ferdinand is merely trying to protect you from poison," but Broswitha explained. Letizia understood that much, but she still felt like he was imprisoning her. "Speaking of which," the head attendant continued, "it would seem that Lady Georgina is preparing to visit old workstock Giebs to ensure they are performing the ceremonies correctly. It glads me to hear they aren't just being left to their own devices." Letizia lowered her eyes. "In truth, I was somewhat looking forward to spring prayer. It was an excuse to venture outside my room, if nothing else. Last year's ceremony ended up being a unique and an interesting experience, as well as a rare and precious opportunity to leave the castle, so she couldn't help resenting Georgine from stealing it from her. My, I on the other hand feel relieved that I do not participate. That ritual would demand such an unreasonably large portion of my mana. Well, duh." Letizia puffed at her cheeks. It wasn't very appropriate gesture for an Archduke candidate, but it helped ease the frustration swirling around within her, and she knew it was minor enough that Roswitha would overlook it. The head attendant merely said, "That look does not suit you, milady," before proposing that they have tea in the garden. Ahrensbach's nobles had requested meetings with their foreign visitors, which had delayed the feast celebrating spring by several weeks. By the time it actually took place, spring prayer had been right around the corner. The Giebs had been given their small chalices and shooed out of the castle almost as soon as the feast concluded, and as the socializing nobles had departed, It had become more common to see Detlinde and the Lansnop envoys wandering throughout the castle. Pharisee, is Roswell still not back yet? Letizia asked, having climbed out of the bath and started getting ready for bed. Just after dinner, the head attendant had gone to speak with her son, Sergius, about reducing her lady's workload. Sergius served Ferdinand as an attendant with, as it stood to reason that she had gone to him. So it would seem, Pharisees replied. Perhaps Lord Ferdinand is struggling to make time for the discussion? Or perhaps she and Sergius are using this opportunity to reconnect, came another suggestion. Despite her attendant's attempts to console her, Letizia went to bed with an uncomfortable weight on her chest. Roswell's absence made her terribly uneasy. Morning came, but Roswell was still nowhere to be found. Not even when Letizia's retainers formed a search party were they able to ascertain her whereabouts. A quick consultation with their son Sergius revealed that some servants had seen her discussing the following day's meals in the kitchen, but nobody had seen her since. Barely able to breathe from the stress, Letizia looked up at Pharisees, who seemed equally as worried. An entire day has passed, she said. I shall request a meeting with Ferdinand to obtain permission to search the main building. I've got a bad feeling she's dead. Ferdinand agreed to the request, but the date he proposed was 5 whole days away. Letizia couldn't wait that long, not when someone so dear to her was missing. Roswitha had stuck with her from Dronkel to Ahrensbach, and essentially was like a second mother to Letizia, who had needed to leave her blood mother behind in the adoption. Not knowing where she was made the girl extremely anxious. Lord Ferdinand might be busy, but we can still speak with Sergius, can we not? Letizia asked, not wanting to delay her search a moment longer. That sounds reasonable enough, Pharisees replied. If you are consulting him about his mother's whereabouts, he should be able to make time for you. In response to the new suggestion, Ferdinand arranged for Sergius to meet with Letizia that very same day. Despite how busy he was doing his utmost to be considerate of her concerns. Sergius, we do not know where Roswitha has gone, Letizia said, explaining the circumstances. Please look for her. Lord Ferdinand has told me to stay away from the main building. Understood, Sergius replied. I shall speak with Lord Ferdinand to see if he can spare a moment. To think she has gone missing. I can only hope this is a false alarm. That night, Letizia received an ordinance from Sergius. Ferdinand would meet her tomorrow in the manor replenishment hall and inquire about the situation there. She appreciated the news, but it did very little to ease her nerves. Roswitha had been missing for 2 days now. Letizia had suspected that she had either collapsed somewhere or gotten wrapped up in something dangerous. Roswitha, please be safe. I got a bad feeling she's dead. It was still dark out when Letizia woke with a scream. Roswitha had come to her in a nightmare, begging to be saved. She'd sat up in bed, already in a cold sweat, and called out to her dearest friend, hoping Roswitha would rush into the room and assuage her fears, but another attendant arrived instead. Morning came before Letizia could get back to sleep. Her thoughts were a blur as she ate breakfast, a dull throbbing jumped against her skull. She had tasks to attend to, but it was no use. Try as she might, she couldn't find the motivation to work. Lord Ferdinand might not listen to your request if you do not finish the work he assigned you, Pharisee warned. Oh, she's right, this is serious. Letizia let out a tiny shriek, shook her head in an attempt to refocus, and dived straight into her work. Come forth bell, Letizia sat down for lunch, disregarding Pharisee's warning that she should eat more slowly. Impatience had long since taken hold. She wanted to go to the manor replenishment hall as soon as possible, so waiting for her retainers to finish eating was agony. Let us hurry, Pharisee. No matter how much you rush, Lady Letizia, you cannot enter the hall without Lord Ferdinand. To enter the Ob's office where the doorway was located, one had to be an archnoble or higher with blood ties to the reigning archduke or archjudges. For that reason, Letizia's retinue for the day was made up entirely of archnobles. Oh my, Letizia, Delinda said, on your way to supply mana. I want to hit her, I want to hit her, I want to hit her. On her way to the Ob's office, Letizia had come across Delinda and Leonzo, who were enjoying some tea in the main building's second floor. A nearby balcony overlooked the city and the ocean in both. The pair had deliberately chosen such a public meeting to demonstrate that they weren't doing anything wrong or worth hiding. Did they have lunch together by chance? Letizia became increasingly annoyed at the thought that Detlinde was spending her days relaxing while pushing more and more work onto her fiancé. Ferdinand was so terribly busy that he couldn't even scrape together enough time to discuss Roswitha's disappearance. The more time passed, the more Letizia's frustrations grew, but she couldn't just continue on her way. She greeted the pair, then gave Leonzio her thoughts on the sweets. I am glad to have given you some reprieve, Leonzio replied. You seemed ill at ease. If something matter, here, take these sweets to raise your spirits. He gave a kind smile and presented some of the sweets he was enjoying with Detlinde. Like the ones he had originally brought as souvenirs, they looked very similar to face stones. Is my concern for Roswitha that obvious? Embarrassed that someone had seen through her, Letizia swallowed down her impatience and accepted the sweets. Refusing would have only angered the pair in any case. Pharisee tried a sweet first, checking it for poison, then Letizia had one as well. The initial taste was the same as that of the sweet she'd eaten before, but as the confection melted in her mouth, a sudden lingering bitterness spread across her tongue. No. Spit that out. Spit it out. Lady Letizia, Leoncio said, what happened to cause you such trouble? I must hear whatever concern is responsible for that frown on your pretty face. Simply voicing one's concerns can do wonders to ease them. Letizia's focus moved away from the bitter taste as she focused on Leoncio's question. Simply discussing her worries would do nothing to assuage them. She was also terribly distracted by Detlendi rather than interjecting as she normally would. They stand and almost merely watching in silence, fixing Letizia with a piercing stare. It was unsettling. I think they just tried to poison her. I was about to discuss the matter with Lord Ferdinand, so you need not worry about me. I thank you ever so much for your concern, though. Letizia then asked for Detlendi's permission to leave. She wanted to escape the conversation as quickly as she could. The longer she spent speaking with Leoncio, the worse Detlendi would treat her when next they meet. Before you go, Leoncio took out a silver tube. Might I suggest using this when you consult with him? You told me he listened to your request the last time you used one, did he not? The thing's got poison in it. It's gotta be. Letizia blinked a few times, surprised that Leoncio remembered. She had mentioned it only in passing while visiting the Lanzanov estate. Touch that someone would show her such consideration, she expressed her thanks and accepted the tube. Pharisee would carry it for the time being. I wonder, will this tube really convince Lord Ferdinand to search of me? Yes, I'm sure it will. No, it won't. It's poison. It's gotta be. Feeling like she had just found a light in the darkness, Letizia continued on her way to the Ob's office. Eckert and Justice, Ferdinand's two most trusted retainers, were waiting outside. As archnobles of Ehrenfest, they had no relation to Ob Ahrensbach, and thus could not enter during Manor Replenishment. Their presence was a show of devotion, if nothing else. Most retainers in their position would simply wait in their rooms. Strahl and Sergius must be inside, so those two could easily have taken a break. Letizia headed through the door to find Strahl, Sergius, and several of her tutors' Ahrensbach retainers, all recognizable faces. She was glad to know her frustration with Detlendi ran deeper than she thought. Strahl, is Lord Ferdinand waiting inside? Yes, my lady, he just went into the hall. I know Manor Replenishment is an arduous task not meant for someone of your young age, but I pray for your success. Letizia nodded in response and went to retrieve the silver tube from Pharisee. The attendant hesitated and then glanced around the room. Lady Letizia, what is this? Sergius asked, his tone sharp. Is it necessary for Manor Replenishment? Letizia took the toy from Pharisee and presented it, trying to hold together the best smile she could muster. This is a negotiation tool that should convince Lord Ferdinand to join our search for Roswitha. She is still alive, isn't she? There's a short pause before Sergius replied. She is somewhere in this building. Ordnances still travel to her, but they fly through too many locked doors for us to work out her exact location. Roswitha hadn't once responded, but at least she was still alive. Letizia wanted to hurry to her rescue, but she was forbidden from leaving the northern building and wouldn't be able to unlock the doors on her own. Only Georgina and Ferdinand were in a position to borrow the key from Detlendi. Lady Georgina is absent for spring prayer, so Lord Ferdinand is our only hope, Letizia said. I was able to convince him with one of these before, so... Yes, I remember Lord Ferdinand taking a particular interest in this design. Sergius knelt and crossed his arms. It gladdens me to know that you are so intent on helping my mother. Letizia directed the attendant to stand. It is nothing worthy of your gratitude. I simply cannot live without Roswitha. And so, with the silver tube in hand, Letizia entered the Manor Replenishment Hall. I wish you had left it there. Why did you bring it with you? I know what it is. It's gotta be poison. Ferdinand must have heard her footsteps as he turned around, presented with her face down, and said, let us begin. First, there's something I must say. If you help me search for Roswitha, I will give you this. She held out the toy with a bright glimmer in her eyes, but Ferdinand shook his head. I thoroughly investigated the last one you gave me, he said. They are of no interest to me now, and in any case, it would be wise to give up on Roswitha. What? Letizia found it surprising enough that Ferdinand wasn't interested in the tube, but being told to give up on her head attendant was harrowing. She had mentioned during her move to Ahrensbach that Roswitha was like family to her, so she had never expected such a cold response. My apologies, but could you repeat that? Letizia asked, wide-eyed. I must have misheard you. She wanted to believe it was some kind of mistake, or if not, convince him to rethink his stance, but her hopes were dashed when Ferdinand gave the same response. This time with a cold stare. He did not want the silver tube, and this should give up on Roswitha. You can't be serious, she uttered. I could never give up Roswitha. Please, Lord Ferdinand, help me search. Ordinances still travel to her, and she seemed to be somewhere in the main building. She's Sergius's mother. She's family to one of your retainers, so please help. Ferdinand sighed and rubbed his forehead as if dealing with a disobedient child throwing a tantrum. Sergius has reported that any ordinances sent to her head to an assortment of locked rooms I do not have the authority to open. So we are unable to pinpoint her exact location. Moreover, this is an obvious trap. These responsible want you to attempt a rescue. To minimize the harm that comes from all this, you must give up on her. Letizia couldn't accept what she was hearing. She needed to save Roswitha, yet her desires were being completely disregarded. Roswitha, as the world around her suddenly began to fade, she squeezed her eyes shut and clenched her teeth. The bitter taste from the sweet Leonzo had given her still lingered in her mouth, and it brought to mind something he had said. Might I suggest using this when you consult with him? Using the tube? It's poison. It's poison. The words echoed in her mind over and over again. Her head started to spin and her thoughts blurred. I need to use the tube. Yes, it all seems so clear to me now. He will not listen to me unless I use it. Obeying the message in her head, Letizia gripped the silver tube and stared up at Ferdinand. He looked at her in turn, his handsome face cold as ice, and then bent down to give her a face down as though he had already forgotten about Roswitha. If you have calmed down, Lady Letizia, then let us begin mana replenishment. He reached out to her. That toy will only get in the way, so allow me to hold on to it. No, if he takes it from me, I won't be able to persuade him. He won't be able to save Roswitha. Panicking at the thought, Letizia yanked on the string attached to the tube. Please, Lord Ferdinand, help me save Roswitha. But what came out the end wasn't a burst of petals or even a shower of sparks. Instead, there was a cloud of white dust. I knew it! It's poison! It's poison! Oopsie! Letizia, that wasn't a smart move! What is this powder? Letizia was too distracted to notice, but Ferdinand grimaced immediately. He pulled up his cape to cover his mouth, shouted, "Do not brave it in," and thrust his hand against her shoulder. Ferdinand had struck too suddenly for Letizia to react. She was thrown backward at a short distance before landing on her bottom. Barely an instant later, an interior light began radiating from his chest, coming from beneath his clothes. Rose mine. What? The rainbow light was so dazzling that Letizia forgot all about the dull ache racking her body. Stranger still was how Ferdinand had reacted. He had suddenly clutched at his breast and choked out Rosemine's name. Letizia wasn't sure what he had said, and why he had said it here of all places, but at the same moment the light shining from his chest converged into an even brighter pillar. What's happening? The light enveloped Ferdinand, then slowly began to spread through the entire hall. Letizia was covered, too, and immediately felt more composed, as if all the darkness clouding her mind had suddenly been cleansed. Lord Ferdinand? She didn't know what had caused it, but she could tell that Ferdinand was in immense pain. He had dropped to his knees and was coughing violently. Lord Ferdinand! Letizia raced over just as Ferdinand took something from his potion belt and forced it past his lips. He then worked to unlock a small gilded cage, though his hands trembled and sweat dripped down from his brow. Something was clearly wrong. But Letizia didn't know what to do. She looked around for anyone who might be able to help. Give this to Justice, Ferdinand sputtered. He could only manage only a word or two before coughing fits, and the look in his golden eyes spoke to a man well past his limits. Tell him to go, now. Yes, perhaps his most trusted retainers would know what to do. Letizia took the cage, spun around, and sprinted toward the exit. Even as she went, Ferdinand continued to urge her away between gasps. What's happening? Why is Ferdinand in so much pain? What was that rainbow light? Someone please tell me! Her heart beating frantically and painfully in her chest. Letizia dashed out of the mana replenishment hall. Lady Letizia, her retainers cried, surprised to see her alone. Have you finished supplying mana already? Please open the door, she said, continuing to run, even as her legs shook and her knees threatened to buckle. I am in a hurry. Eckert and Justice were among those waiting outside. They turned to look at Letizia the moment she appeared. She met their gaze, then extended the cage to Justice, whom she knew better than side was a face stone, and 3 white cocoons, all rattling around. Lord Ferdinand, he said to go, Letizia wheezed. The 2 retainers froze, then Justice snatched up the cage. As he instantly stared at it, he muttered the words, Lord Ferdinand. Eckert's sharp, unblinking eyes were still trained on Letizia. You, he said, what have you done to Lord Ferdinand? He looked calm, but something about his expression was unsettling. His voice was quiet, but it came out much slower than usual. Letizia knew at once that she was being viewed as an enemy. She fell silent, racked with terror, sensing that she was mere moments from her demise. As she began to waver, Eckert raised a hand. Eckert, what are you doing to Lady Letizia? Her guard knights demanded, interrogating her. I need to know what she did to Lord Ferdinand in the Manor Replenishment Hall. Only members of the Archducal family can enter. Therefore, whatever happened, she must be the culprit. You accuse her of a crime? This is outrageous. What madness has consumed you? Letizia's guard knights forced themselves between Eckert and their fearful charge, brandishing their weapons. Eckert took out his staff in response, ready to fight, but Justice grabbed him by the collar and roared, Eckert! Forget this interrogation. Our orders come first, and what did our Lord tell us to do? He told us to go, Eckert replied. Then we're departing at once, Justice said. Now white as a sheet. He glared at Letizia and the door to the Ob's office and turned on his heel and sprinted away. Eckert was gritting his teeth, but he put away his staff and followed. They appeared to know what go meant, but Stroll and Sergius exchanged confused glances. Ferdinand must not have shared the command with all of his retainers. Sergius Straw, apprehend these 2, said one of Letizia's knights. We need to know the reason for their sudden aggression and determine what Lord Ferdinand meant. Sergius and Straw nodded, then gave chase. Lady Letizia, what in the world happened? First, he asked upon her charges returned to the office. If something happened wrong with Lord Ferdinand. Letizia parted her lips to answer, but no words came out. She didn't know what to say. Eckhardt's accusation and the look on his face kept floating through her mind. I did this. She racked her brain, growing desperate. She had used the silver tube in hopes of persuading Lord Ferdinand, but it had really been the cause of his agony? If so, why hadn't she also doubled over? Lord Ferdinand is yet to leave the hall, Letizia said. I will return to see how he is doing, but as she went to move, she heard footsteps approaching. My, what is the cause of all this fuss? Came a voice from outside the room. Lady Detlinde asked one of the knights guarding the door, what business do you have here? Lord Ferdinand and Lady Letizia are currently supplying mana out of the other, likewise trying to prevent her entry. Those inside the room also took action, assuming defensive positions around their lady. Letizia looked at her retainers, then at the door to the men of replenishment hall. There was no escape. Lies, Detlinde snapped. Lord Ferdinand's retainers just raced off, and Letizia is right there in the office. She pushed past the guards, bringing along her retainers and several silver-clothed envoys. Leonzio was beside her, holding a silver tube and wearing a handsome smile. Lady Letizia, he said with a smirk, you consulted with Lord Ferdinand, I assume? He mimed pulling the string of the toy in his hand, and with that Letizia finally understood she really was to blame. She had allowed Leonzio to trick and manipulate her. Lord Leonzio, what have you done? Lady Detlinde, he said, the situation is exactly as it appears. Lady Letizia has murdered Lord Ferdinand. Might I ask you to retrieve his face stone? As Letizia stood rooted to the spot, still processing the accusation, Leonzio escorted Detlinde to the entrance of the man of replenishment hall. It pains me to force such a duty upon you, my lady, but this must be done for the sake of our future. Goodness me, you are such a worrywart. Detlinde replied, not only am I equipped with your presence, but I am also fated to become the next Zent. Now then, she took in a breath. Everyone capture Letizia. She has murdered my fiancé in a breach of royal decree. Detlinde giggled as she slid a registration face stone into the door before her, then stepped into the hall. Letizia knew in her heart that Ferdinand was still inside, in agony because of what she had done. I must help him. But when she tried to chase after Detlinde, Leonzio grabbed onto her arm. You heard Lady Detlinde, she said to the others. Capture her. Watch your mouth, one of the guards shouted. Lady Letizia has done no such thing. The knights all turned their staffs into weapons, while the gathered envoys narrowed their eyes and shook out silver blades. The tension in the room was palpable. Leonzio continued to smile plastered across his face. We can all see what took place here. Lady Letizia grew sick of the brutally strict education forced upon her by her Zent-appointed tutor, so she decided to murder him. She waited until they were alone in the man of replenishment hall, then took his life unopposed. That isn't true, Letizia protested. I don't hate You made your frustrations more than clear at the Lanzanov estate and during tea parties, Leonzio continued in a bright voice. Many have heard you bemoan at how his refusal to reduce your workload, no matter how much you ask. That's still not a reason to murder him. Detlinde's retainers expressed their agreement. Pharisee had turned ghostly white, but she protectively threw her arms around Letizia. Don't be ridiculous. How could Lady Letizia even hope to harm Lord Ferdinand? Like this, Leonzio said, then pulled the string attached to his silver tube. And again, everybody's gonna die. Another cloud of white powder shot into the air, and a loud clatter resounded through the room. In a blink of an eye, everyone but Letizia, Pharisee, Detlinde's retainers, and the envoys had turned into face stones. What? Dang, that's quick! Ferdinand, what did you do? How did you survive that? Well, what am I saying? The frickin' charms. Letizia's mind went blank. This wasn't at all what had happened with Ferdinand. She knew deep down the face stones littering the floor were her retainers, but she couldn't bring herself to accept it. Her throat seized up as if she had forgotten how to breathe, and a loud ringing filled her ears. Goodness, Lord Leonzio, what a cruel liar you are, Detlinde sighed, returning from the hall with a hand on her cheek. Lord Ferdinand was not a face stone at all. We will need to wait quite a while longer. Oh? Leonzio blinked in confusion. What state was he in, then? The poison worked on the others, as you can see. Detlinde held up a hand, urging him to be silent, then gazed down at Letizia with her usual smile. She looked so nonchalant like she couldn't see the face stones scattered across the floor. How could she smile like that? How? Through chattering teeth, Letizia attempted to protest. Lord Ferdinand is dead, Detlinde cackled, and you are to blame. No, he's not dead yet, or else he would have had his face stoned. I want someone to smack Detlinde. Confronted with the harrowing truth, Letizia crumpled to her knees. Her strength had vanished so suddenly that she could no longer stand. Though she hadn't done it on purpose, the fact remained that she had poisoned Ferdinand. Even now, she could recall in excruciating detail the terrifying looks on Eckhardt's and Justice's faces. Their eyes had naturally blazed with anger. We discovered your murder and will punish you in due time, Detlinde continued, her tone now performative. Such is the fate you deserve, is it not? Assassinating the fiancé of your duchy's next ob is a grave crime indeed. And, yep, this is all her plan. At last, the situation was laid bare. Georgine had created the exact circumstances necessary for her scheme, and Letizia had played right into her hands. Your crime is worthy of immediate execution, Detlinde said, but fear not, Letizia, as an act of compassion, I, the next Zent, shall allow you to live. Assuming that you spend the rest of your days in Lanzanov, that is. I will even send your retainer and the ladies on your side to join you. Your lives will be spared as long as you never show your faces here again. She waved a hand. Now, take her away. Right on cue, the group from Lanzanov moved to capture Letizia and Pharisee. Lady Letizia, run! Pharisee shouted. She tried to resist, but her stat-made sword was useless against the envoys dressed in silver as they were. Letizia and Pharisee were up against 8 of Detlende's guard knights, and more than a dozen envoys. Escaping had always been a pipe dream. They were immediately caught and restrained. Now that I am rid of all obstacles, I can finally obtain the Grujashite, Detlende said in the sing-song. I must inform Mother that everything has gone according to plan. She then marched out of the room, inspiring her entourage to follow. Their 2 bound prisoners were also dragged along. Lady Letizia! Pharisee! Before the group could get very far, they crossed paths with Stroll and Sergius. Uh-oh. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. The 2 retainers were meant to be pursuing Eckert and justice, so why had they returned was a mystery. They drew their staffs the moment they saw what was happening. Lady Detlende, what are you doing to them? Stroll demanded. A shiver ran down Letizia's spine. Stroll and Sergius were about to make the same mistake her retainers had made before returning to Phaystones. At this rate, they would meet the same end. No, father, Pharisee cried. Staffs do not work against them. They have poison that instantly turns people into Phaystones, Letizia added. Run, save the others. Silence, the envoy shouted. They threw punches at their 2 prisoners in an attempt to silence them, but it was too late. The most important information had already been conveyed. Stroll and Sergius both leaped back and immediately fled. Oh, how much easier this would have been if we had managed to eliminate Stroll, then, Detlende sighed. She gave Letizia a sympathetic, yet mocking look. I would advise you not to play such tricks again, Letizia. You will only regret it. Letizia was taken to a section of the main building she had never seen before. Detlende stepped before one of the many doors around them and unlocked it. There was muffled groans coming from the other side. Roswith? It has to be Roswith! She's still alive! An area filled with locked doors? Letizia gazed around and saw many other doors, most of which seemed largely unused. As a sickening sense of unease spread through her chest, she noticed that Detlende and Leonzo had disappeared into the newly unlocked room. All of a sudden, the quiet groans stopped, and a deafening silence filled the room. Letizia's heart beat frantically in her chest, and she lost all feeling in her extremities. You asked Lord Ferdinand to search for Roswitha, did you not? Detlende asked, her red lips curving into a wicked grin. How sweet of you to care about your retainers. Leonzio then dropped a multicolored face stone at Letizia's feet. It landed with a light clatter before rolling across the floor. Roswitha was much too loud, he said. We could never have taken her to Lanzanov while she was making such a racket, so we decided to compromise. How could we not have when you were willing to murder Lord Ferdinand and rescue her? Rejoice, Lady Letizia, for Lanzanov will now welcome you and Roswitha both. Letizia's throat closed. As she stared at the face stone before her, she started seeing red. She could no longer maintain her noble facade. No, Roswitha! Letizia screamed at the top of her lungs, wailing to no end, but there was nobody around to save her. Too late. As her vision went dark, her head was filled with Detlende's shrill laughter. Arrgh! I hate them! Poor people, they didn't deserve that! They didn't! They were just trying to do what they had to do, but no! I hope Detlende gets executed for this. I really do hope so. And same for Georgina and Leonzio. They all deserve to die. Hopefully the royal family will get that in their heads. I'll see you guys in the next video.